Today is the day, everyone. It feels like Christmas. The 2025 NFL Draft is here, and we've got my final one-round mock draft. I always like to do one the morning of the draft to try to connect all the dots of the rumors and smoke I've been seeing, along with sort of my own gut predictions. This is a predictive mock, not necessarily what I would do, but instead trying to predict the picks, and there are trades in here, so buckle up. Of course, this is being uploaded on the main channel, my gaming channel, and then the second channel as well, my draft channel. For those of you watching on the main channel who didn't know that I had a second channel, the link to that is in the description. If you're interested, I'm going to be posting draft grades over the next couple of days, and I'm hoping to have time before the draft this evening for a what I would do mock draft. If that doesn't end up getting uploaded, then I'm probably going to post it in the Discord server. The link to that is in the description, where I will be chatting with people during the draft. So in case you're curious about my live thoughts and live opinions as the draft goes on, that's where you'll be able to find me. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Yay, the fancy graphics are back. And we'll start with the Titans at number 1. This is going to be Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. This pick is written in Sharpie already. The top 3 picks really are written in Sharpie. Now, on the second channel, I've kind of glossed over these picks at this point because, it's kind of obvious that this is what these 3 teams are going to do. But since this is going on the main channel a little bit, I'll give my analysis and what I think real quick. But long story short, I think all 3 of these teams are making good choices. For the Titans, it's no secret they need a quarterback, and I think Cam Ward is head and shoulders the top quarterback in this draft. Now, he's one of the probably worst number 1 picks of the last decade or so, but I still think there's a world where he'll be able to win with the Titans early. He's a very unique prospect in terms of what he provides off structure, under pressure. He's a magician throwing the football, and I'm curious to see if Tennessee and Brian Callahan will be able to get the most out of him. Travis Hunter at number 2 to the Browns. He will be my number 1 ranked player in the draft when it's all said and done. It seems like the Browns are going to have him major on offense at wide receiver and minor on defense in the secondary, and I think that's the right decision. He's such a dynamic playmaker, you got to find a way to put the ball in his hands, and the best way to do that is have him on the field offensively. And it certainly doesn't hurt that Andrew Berry historically is horrible in terms of drafting wide receivers. And then the idea is that you have him in certain sub packages defensively on the field. I think he'll be able to manage playing both sides in terms of the workload and being able to understand it because he's a really smart kid. Obviously, he's super talented, and the football character with him appears to be off the charts. It's really just a matter of workload and how will he be able to handle it physically. He did in college, but this is the NFL. This isn't quite the Big 12. You're not headed to Lawrence playing against the Kansas Jayhawks anymore. And then Abdul Carter at number 3. I don't think the Giants are going to overthink this one. He's the best player, at least at a premium position on the board. An alien-level athlete who is still learning the nuances of being an edge rusher, but he's only been a traditional edge rusher for really 1 season now. So you got to think he'll be able to get better quickly, and if he hits his upside, we're looking at a potential game record off the edge. Of course, the Giants are probably going to pick a quarterback early at some point, but they are not going to do it at 3, and they should not do it at 3. All right, number 4, New England. This is going to be Will Campbell, the offensive lineman out of LSU. I think this is too early for him. I would pick him probably in the middle of the first round. I'm a little concerned about the arm length, man. He's a T-Rex out there, and assuming he does start a game for the Patriots at tackle, which if you're drafting him at 4, I imagine the plan is to play him at tackle, then I believe he will have the shortest arm length of any starting NFL tackle since the turn of the century. Now, on the flip side, the guy's a good football player. Whether it's at tackle, whether it's at guard, New England's getting a solid starter for the offensive line, and it's hard to complain with them focusing on the trenches, protecting their quarterback. So, assuming this is the route that they go with, I'm not going to grade this pick an F, probably more like a C, C+. If they were able to trade down to like 10 or something and pick him, I would be all on board with it. 4 is a little bit rich, but I get it, and I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it either. Number 5, Jacksonville. I had them staying here. There's a ton of buzz right now that the Bears are going to be able to land Ashton Jeanty, specifically with a trade up, probably to this spot. I don't think it would be New England. I think it's more likely if Chicago makes something work, it'd be with Jacksonville. But my guess is that Jacksonville's just going to stay here and pick Jeanty. And the way I view it is I would absolutely use a top 4 or 5 pick on him. If I'm New England, he's the pick at 4 for me. And if I'm Jacksonville, he's the pick at 5. And obviously it's a little bit weird because, he is a running back. These are two rebuilding teams. Would it make sense to pick a running back? And the answer to that question for me is yes. There are a lot of good players in this class, but there aren't a lot of dudes in the sense of, I think this guy's going to be an all-pro caliber player, or he's that level of prospect at least. Travis Hunter is one of them. He's gone. Abdul Carter is one of them. He's gone. Ashton Jeanty is probably the last remaining of that group. And I think if you're a team in the top 5, you're not going to be able to get a player close to the caliber of Jeanty if you move down with a team like the Bears. So, yes, Jacksonville could move down. They could add one of the Bears' second-rounders. They can pick a position of higher value. But we just saw what Saquon Barkley did with the Eagles. As the best running back in the NFL, he elevated their offense. He was the most important player on that offense, in my opinion, and might be the number one reason why they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So I think that's going to scare teams less off of adding elite running backs and paying elite running backs. And using a top 5 pick on one is a major investment, but I think it's worth it. This would be the right decision, in my opinion, for the Jaguars. Number 6, Armand Membou to the Raiders. They've been the Ashton Jeanty team. There's been some noise that if he's on the board, they wouldn't pick him. I'm not buying it. If Jeanty's here at 6, I think he'll be a Raider. The problem is, unlike maybe a week ago where we thought it would happen, I don't think Jeanty's going to be here for them to begin with. So I think they're going to pivot to Membou, adding a big-time piece on the offensive line. It seems like Colton Miller's future here is murky. You can keep Miller, have him at left tackle. Armand Membou's a natural right tackle, so it would work. I think this would be a solid selection for the Raiders. Mason Graham at number 7 at the Jets. Not really a team and player who have been connected a whole lot, but this is year 1 for general manager Darren Mogi and head coach Aaron Glenn. Why not pick who you believe is the best player available? I don't think Mason Graham is. I think similar to Will Campbell, he's a really good prospect who's worthy of going in the first round. 7's a little bit rich, but I don't hate it. Again, this would probably be like a B minus grade for me. But I think Mason Graham would be a good fit in this defense. Aaron Glenn coming from Detroit, they're looking for kneecap biters. They're looking for guys who can play the trenches at a high level, and pairing him on that defensive line with Quinnen Williams and then guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald off the edge, I think it'd be a good pick for them. I think Tyler Warren would definitely be in play, and I think this would be the popular pick for them if the top 6 were to play out like this. But I could see them just picking Graham, focusing on the trenches. I think that'd make a lot of sense. Jalen Walker to Carolina at number 8. I think I said it yesterday on the second channel. I would love to play poker with the Panthers because they're not very good at hiding their cards. Jalen Walker's been the guy for them since February. Now, it would be ironic if he's not the pick, which seems like there's a little more noise about that being the case, so it's certainly possible. Maybe Carolina's fooled us all, or at least they would have fooled me. But I think they will end up picking Jalen Walker. You look at a guy who has great versatility, you line him on the edge, put him at linebacker, teams are speaking ravingly of his football character. I don't think I'd use a top 10 pick on him, but for a guy who was used all over the field, he probably was Georgia's best defensive player last year, and I'd be really intrigued to see how Ejiro Evero ends up using him defensively. Very similarly with Jalen Walker, another guy whose character is pushing him up the board is Kelvin Banks out of Texas. There's a lot of top 10 noise about him. I think realistically this is where his ceiling starts, although I've seen as high as number 5 with Jacksonville, but I think this makes a lot of sense if you look at it for the New Orleans Saints, a team who has not been afraid to use high picks on the offensive line. I think this will be their 6th first-round lineman in the last 10 years with Andrus Peat, Ryan Ramczyk, Cesar Ruiz, Trevor Penning, whose 5th-year option was just declined, by the way. Banks would be the replacement. And then Talise Fuanga last year, and that doesn't even include Eric McCoy, who was a second-rounder in 2019. I'm pretty sure he was the first player they drafted that year, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a team who's not afraid to look to the line early, and with Trevor Penning's future seemingly not in New Orleans, it would make sense for them to look to add a replacement at tackle. And I think Kelvin Banks and Talise Fawanga on the left side of that line would be a nice duo. Both of those guys, tackle guard flexibility. Maybe Fawanga kicks back out to tackle. Maybe Banks moves inside to guard. The Saints have a lot of different ways they could go about this. Of course, this could be a quarterback destination, but it seems like they're not even interested in Shedeur Sanders in the slightest. And if it is a quarterback, that it would be Jackson Dart, which personally I would be surprised if he's the choice here at number 9, despite some people saying that he's not going to get by number 9 today. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that's smoke. I do buy that the Saints are probably going to look for a quarterback at some point. My guess is Tyler Shough in the second round. It seems like they like him a whole lot. Number 10, the Bears miss out on Ashton Jeanty. I am fully buying that they want to move up for him, but it takes 2 to tango. I don't think Jacksonville's going to move off of him. And again, I don't think Jacksonville should move off of him. But if the Bears do not land Jeanty, there are a few options for them. Again, I think Tyler Warren would be the popular pick here, but I have them going a different direction with Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. I think Williams is going to go earlier than people expect. This might be a whole lot earlier than people expect, but it makes sense. I think he fits the Dennis Allen prototype in terms of being an oversized defensive end who has a lot of power, needs some polish, but I think the Bears would be the team who would be very well equipped to develop him. I don't think this is how the Bears would hope, or at least the Bears fan base would hope the first round goes, even aside from missing out on Jeanty. But I think I'd honestly prefer this compared to picking Tyler Warren for Chicago. Walter Nolen at number 11. This is a fascinating discussion for me because Peter Schrager put him at 11 yesterday. Daniel Jeremiah had him out of the first round entirely. And I would say those are probably the 2 guys I trust the most in this industry in terms of information and mock drafts and whatnot. And the 2 of them are completely far apart on Nolen. So I think that kind of shows the unpredictability of this year's draft. I personally believe that he will go early, and I think he should go this high. I think he's an unbelievably talented player. I think the upside with him is so high. The flashes at Ole Miss this year were really impressive, and I think the Niners are going to get the best out of him in terms of his development and Robert Saleh's defensive scheme, along with the character. I think that's probably the biggest reason why DJ had him slipping out of the first round entirely. I think the Niners will be willing to take the chance on it, and if the character doesn't prove to be an issue, then I think this pick could really pay dividends for them. Ted McMillan to the Cowboys at number 12. They've got to make a splash. They've got to add a big-time weapon to this offense. CeeDee Lamb is great, but he cannot be a one-man show. McMillan certainly could go earlier than this. I think this is the floor for him, and if it's not Jeanty at number 5, I think it would be Ted McMillan for Jacksonville. And if they do trade back with the Bears, I think he would be their guy. The problem for Jacksonville is if they move down to 10, there's no guarantee McMillan makes it to 10 because number 6, the Raiders, they would be in play. John Spytek coming over from the Buccaneers. We know obviously what Mike Evans has done for that offense. The Jets at number 7, they would be in play. They need a complement for Garrett Wilson. The Panthers would be in play. They need a number 1 for Bryce Young, and I think New Orleans would be in play. They need another guy alongside Chris Olave, and his future is questionable with the concussion history. So that's 4 teams, 5 if you include Jacksonville, who I think would be in on McMillan. He falls to number 12, though. Dallas gladly makes this selection. If it's not McMillan, I don't think it would be Matthew Golden here, though. Wouldn't surprise me, but it seems like a lot of noise has put them potentially with an offensive lineman. One of Tyler Booker or Grace Zabel might be the pick here at number 12 if it's not McMillan, but luckily for Dallas, that's not an issue because, well, he makes it to 12. Number 13, we finally have a trade. There's a lot of trades today, but most of them are in the 20s. I have the Broncos moving up here, not for a Marion Hampton. That's been the common pairing of team and player over the last couple of weeks. I have pegged Hampton to the Broncos. I even had them trading up for him recently. But Tyler Warren is still on the board, and with the Colts up next, they are eyeing him up like a hawk. And Denver's thinking, no way, Jose. So they're going to trade pick 20 along with number 51 in the second round to the Dolphins for pick 13. Very straightforward deal. Miami moves down 7 spots. They added 2. Denver gets Tyler Warren. Now, there's a lot of spots he could end up going before this. The Jets, the Saints, the Bears, the Cowboys. I think they are all in play for Warren, but I just felt like there were slightly better picks or picks that are slightly more likely. So Warren slips a little bit, and Denver takes advantage. I am salivating over the thought of him in a Sean Payton offense. I mean, we know what he was able to do with Taysom Hill, and I think Tyler Warren can be Taysom Hill, but on mega, steroids. I mean, he was used to do everything for Penn State last year. He was their offense. Now, I do have some questions about Warren, given that, many of his touches offensively were manufactured. That's not necessarily going to be the case in the NFL because, unlike college, it's no gimme that he's going to be the most talented player on the field every game he plays. So I do kind of question what and how his skill set will translate to the NFL, but if anyone's going to get the most out of him, it would 100% be Sean Payton. So the Colts miss out on Warren, but Colston Loveland is not a bad consolation prize, and it really doesn't seem like Loveland's going to fall much farther than this, if he even gets there to begin with. I think maybe as high as number 10 with the Bears could be in play. And I'd be really intrigued to see how Shane Steichen and company would use Loveland in this offense. Is he going to get a majority of his snaps in line? Is he going to play as a big slot? I'd be very fascinated to see how it would work, but I think it'd be a fun pick for Indianapolis. Mike Green to the Falcons at number 15. Mike Green is a really, really, really good football player. Excellent pass rusher, 17 sacks, looked the part at the Senior Bowl. Very underrated run defender in my opinion. And the Falcons are a team who have not been afraid of questionable character guys. I think they'd be willing to take the shot here on Green. They have to pick a pass rusher with this pick. There's no way they don't, right? I mean, we've been expecting it for years at this point that they pick a pass rusher in the first round. Last year it seemed like a lock. And then, well, obviously, they went in another direction. But given that they're not going to pick a quarterback here, they're not going to pick a running back here, they're not going to pick a tight end here, maybe this is finally the year they pick an edge rusher in the first, maybe? And then Tyler Booker to the Cardinals at number 16. He's going to go earlier than people expect. I think the latest is Seattle at number 18. I could see the Bengals before him. Obviously, the Cardinals at number 16, given that he's the pick here. Colts at 14, Dolphins at 13, Dallas at 12. I've seen as high as New Orleans at number 9. Could be in play for Tyler Booker. So it seems like somewhere in the teens is probably going to be his sweet spot. Really, really good pass protector, and I think that's what Arizona needs to focus on. Get more help for Kyler Murray to where he'll be able to play at a high level, not just from September to November, but through the entirety of the season, because when he's on, there's maybe 10 quarterbacks in the league better than him. Not many. So I think this would be a solid selection. Now on to the back half of the first round. I think this is where the spectacle of the draft is going to be tonight. This is where we're going to see the trades. This is where we're going to see the surprises. This is where we might see the quarterbacks start to go. But not at number 17. We'll start simple. Kenneth Grant to the Bengals. They've got to pick defense here, right? Specifically, I would say a defensive lineman or an edge rusher. Kenneth Grant is a space eater in the middle of that Michigan defense with the potential to be more than that. So I think this would be a solid selection here for Cincinnati. Gray Zabel to Seattle. This pick's got to be an offensive lineman, right? Zabel seemingly could go as high as I've seen number 11 to the 49ers. Dallas at 12, Dolphins at 13, Colts at 14, all very much in play, along with probably the Cardinals and the Bengals. But he ends up here in Seattle. He can play just about every position on the line, which is, well, it's helpful for Seattle because they need every position on the line. And I would think Seattle's going to pick another lineman fairly early, maybe with their very next pick in the second round. Donovan Ezeraku to the Buccaneers. For much of this draft cycle, Jahad Campbell has been penciled in here to Tampa Bay, and I'll get it out the way now. I don't have Jahad Campbell going in the first round tonight. I have viewed him as a first-round prospect, specifically to the Buccaneers here at 19, the whole time. But I'm pivoting here at the last moment, and the reason? Medical. So Campbell just is recovering from a torn labrum. I believe he had surgery after the combine, and he probably will not be healthy for the start of training camp. He'll be behind the 8 ball. And especially at a position like linebacker where, being ahead is important, that could be a problem and turn off some teams such as Tampa Bay. So I have them going in another direction here with Ezeraku. Highly productive pass rusher, a little undersized, but a really, really good player. I think this will be a solid move at 19. The Dolphins traded down from 13. A lot of rumors have linked them to Malachi Starks. I could see that. But I think Nick Eamon-Wari might make even more sense. This one really, I think, would be a fun fit. You look at Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator. Where did he come from? Baltimore. He was in the building when the Ravens drafted Kyle Hamilton. I don't think Nick Emmanwori is Kyle Hamilton, but I think the idea here is that the Dolphins would try to use him in a pretty similar way. I think it'd be a fun pick. I don't know if I would pick Emmanwori that early, and I certainly don't think I would expect him to be Kyle Hamilton, but I think I could see the Dolphins trying to do this, and it would be a fun idea. All right, now we get to the point of the draft where things get really weird. I feel really good about the first 20 or 21 picks. I don't feel very good about the back end of the first round, largely because I have, I think, 5 trades the rest of the way. And that includes number 21, although I actually really like this move. So, Shedeur Sanders is on the board, Jackson Dart is on the board, and the Steelers do not have a starting quarterback next year. And pretty much every rumor has been that, or at least every mock draft says that they're probably going to pick one here. However, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of confidence, per se, that the Steelers are going to do it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of confidence that they're going to pick Shedeur. It's more so, he's been falling, and, well, no one really expected him to be here at number 21, so let's just pencil him in for the Steelers. Well, who's to say the Steelers want to pick him to begin with? So I'm going to call my shot. Shedeur Sanders will not be the 21st pick. He will not go to the Steelers. Is there a real chance I end up being wrong? Yes, absolutely. It's possible, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I've got the Bills moving up, giving away picks 30, 62, and 170 to the Steelers for 21 and 23. They're going to pick Jahdae Barron, the corner out of Texas. Let's travel back in time around 3 years ago. Trent McDuffie out of Washington, similar player in the sense that he's good inside, he's good outside, projected to go around where Jahdae Barron is in this year's draft, and he ended up falling a little bit into the 20s. Well, the Chiefs and the Bills were both there. They both needed corners, but the Chiefs, who were behind Buffalo, leapfrogged them to get McDuffie, while the Bills had to settle for a different corner, Kaiir Elam. 3 years later, McDuffie's one of the most impactful defensive players in the NFL, playing for Buffalo's number 1 rival at the moment, while Kaiir Elam isn't even on the Bills anymore. That move really might have changed the landscape in a way of the AFC, and since that trade, the Chiefs have made the Super Bowl 3 times. They've beaten Buffalo in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure all 3 years. And a big reason for that is getting Trent McDuffie. So the Bills are trying their own version of that, in a sense. Now, they're not stopping the Chiefs from getting Jahdae Barron, but the point remains. And I think he fits what the Bills like in the secondary. He's versatile, can play inside, can play outside, can play safety if you need him to. So I think this would be a fun move for Buffalo. So now the real question is, when do we see QB2 off the board? Because it's not 21 to the Steelers. Well, good news for Shedeur Sanders is that he's not going to have to wait much farther. The Cleveland Browns are trading up with the Chargers at number 22. LA will get 33, 67, and 179, while the Browns get 22 and 125 and the opportunity to pick Shedeur Sanders. All of the odds are now saying that Sanders will not be the second quarterback taken and that he won't even go in the first round. I think both of those are very possible. But I still kind of think in my gut that he goes before Jackson Dart, and I could absolutely see it being the Cleveland Browns. You look at the other teams who have been, linked to quarterbacks. It doesn't seem like the Giants are in on Sanders. It doesn't seem like the Saints are in on him. I don't really think the Steelers are in on him. Maybe the Rams. That's kind of the team for Cleveland that I knew I had to jump with them. I knew that they had to pick before the Rams. Minnesota obviously could be a trade-down candidate at number 24, but I found a nice deal here with the Chargers. I think it makes sense for them. And then for Cleveland, you get your quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. I don't think I would do this if I was the Browns, but I get it. I mean, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, their seats are not getting any cooler. You reunite him with Travis Hunter. There's going to be an excitement for this team that's never really been had in recent years with the Browns, and it will be a lot of fun, if nothing else. Shemar Stewart to the Packers at number 23. His name kind of seems to be all over for people in the first round. I think Green Bay makes sense when you look at their prototype on the defensive line. Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, both bigger, athletic pass rushers with questionable production, and it seems like they're batting .500 in doing that. Rashawn Gary isn't some, phenomenal player, but pretty good pick. Lucas Van Ness, meanwhile, hasn't worked out so well, but he's only entering year 3. Maybe he can right the ship. And with Stewart, obviously the production is a concern. He's never had more than 1.5 sacks in a season during his 3 years with Texas A&M, but I think he deserves a little bit of the pass. Texas A&M's defense is not designed for defensive linemen to put up big numbers, as shown by other defensive linemen in this class. Walter Nolan, former number 1 recruit in his high school class, or maybe number 2, depending on who you ask. It was him and Travis Hunter at the top. Nolan goes to Texas A&M, plays there for 2 years, transfers to Ole Miss, and he was a lot more productive with the Rebels. Nick Scorton, possible first rounder. I think he's more of the mid-second round guy, but he started his career at Purdue, was really good. Transfers to A&M, bulks up, and his production falls off. Fadil Diggs on day 3, transferred to Syracuse, was a lot more productive there. That's 3 examples of guys who played for Texas A&M and another school, and all of them were considerably more productive at the other school. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't concerns with Stewart's game. He needs to improve as a run defender, although I think he's solid in that area. He needs to improve his down-to-down consistency. I do think he's a disruptor. I'm pretty sure he did lead A&M in pressures this year. He's got to be able to finish plays, though, but I personally believe in the upside, and I think I would use a first-round pick on him. Number 24, we've got a trade. Not a big one, though. The Texans are moving up 1 spot, swapping picks with the Vikings. Minnesota will turn pick 139 into pick 89, and the Texans are going to get Josh Conerly Jr. out of Oregon. I had this same trade in my last mock draft with trades, but I had the Texans moving up for Matthew Golden instead, and he is still on the board. And I really thought about it here. I was torn between the two of them. But I think the Texans are over minus 200 right now to pick an offensive lineman in the first round. And given that they traded away Laramie Tunsil and they didn't really replace him, I'd be hard-pressed to think they don't pick a lineman in the first round, especially considering this draft really isn't very deep. Sure, you can move up in the second for a guy like Ariante Ursary. Maybe Josh Simmons slips and you trade up for him, but other than that, there's a big drop-off at the tackle position, so if you want one, you probably have to pick one now. Conerly is a little bit rough around the edges, but he's improved every season he's played with Oregon. I don't know if he's going to be great right away, but I think he could be quite good down the line. So Minnesota moves down only 1 spot. I imagine they would prefer to move down a little bit farther, given that they only have 4 picks, and even after their trade with the Texans, they still only have 4. I have them staying here and picking Malachi Starks. I think he might be too much for them to pass up. I think this will be a really fun fit in this defense. I think he's one of the 15 best pure football players in the class. He's versatile. He can play deep. He can play in the nickel. He can maybe try him in the outside of the box. That feels a little bit more unlikely, but who knows what Minnesota tries to do. The Vikings love their versatile defensive backs. Look at what they've done with a guy like Josh Metellus, per se. And with Cameron Bynum leaving, I think Starks would be the natural replacement at free safety, where he played his best at the University of Georgia. So I think that would be a nice move for them if they're not able to move back and get a nice haul. All right, now the trades are really going to pile in. We've got one here at number 26. The Kansas City Chiefs are moving up with the Rams. They will be swapping, obviously, first-rounders, and they'll be swapping third-rounders. The Chiefs at the 66th pick from Tennessee for L'Jarius Sneed. The Rams are going to trade 90 to Kansas City for number 66. The Chiefs are going to pick a Marion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. This is really good value. He is probably going to go before this, but this is how the board ultimately played out. Denver's the obvious landing spot for him. They moved up for Tyler Warren. The Steelers could be in play. They moved down. The Chargers could be in play. They moved down. The Vikings could be in play, but Malachi Starks was on the board. The Chiefs have really tried in recent years, though, to be a multi-dimensional offense. The run game has really been lacking, though. Isaiah Pacheco's taken a step down, and when he was injured, they were trotting out Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele. I mean, that's just not going to work, and you have to let the defense respect the run. Otherwise, they're going to put all the attention on Mahomes and the passing game. Patrick Mahomes had his worst season last year. I think there's correlation with the fact that the Chiefs' run game was inconsistent, and the running back play is probably the worst of Mahomes' career, along with the fact that Mahomes wasn't that good for his standards. So I think picking a running back early would make a lot of sense. Obviously, tackle will be in play for them, but with Hampton still on the board, I could see them taking a chance on him. Now, personally, I think I would almost rather them just pick TreVeyon Henderson at 31 if he's even there. That's not a guarantee. I think Henderson would be a really good fit in that offense. He'd give them some more explosiveness, whereas Hampton's just kind of consistent, more well-rounded. I think that's what they would prefer, a Hampton type. I would like to see TreVeyon Henderson in that offense, though. The Ravens get Derek Harmon at number 27. I think he probably should go a little bit earlier than this. Really, really good season last year at Oregon, transferring from Michigan State. But it seems like there's some medical flags with him. Could see him falling down the board a little bit. I think Baltimore is going to take the chance on him, though. He is a good player, and I think he'll fit nicely with the guys they have in the middle of that defense. Number 28, the Giants are moving up for Jackson Dart. I thought long and hard about this one. Pause. But literally everyone is saying that the Giants are going to do this. So either this is happening, or this might be the greatest smoke screen ever. The fact that everyone is saying this is going to happen almost leads me to believe that it won't. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to have the Giants trade up and get them. The Lions are going to get picks 34 and 65, while the Giants get 28 and 102. So kind of similar to the Amarian Hampton deal, where the two sides are going to trade third-rounders. The Giants are now going to be at the end of the third. The Lions now at the beginning of the third. As for Jackson Dart, I personally would not pick him this high. I don't see him as a first-round prospect. But the Giants are desperate. Joe Schoen, his seat is on fire. Brian Daboll, his seat is certainly not cold either. Maybe a little cooler than Schoen, but not by much. They're getting a quarterback, and if they do really like Jackson Dart, I think they may pull out all the stops to get him. Now, this would be a better scenario than most of the other mock drafts out there that had them trading up to the late teens, early 20s. Here, they only have to move up 6 spots. They only have to swap third-rounders, so it could be worse for them. Again, I wouldn't make this move. I mean, if you really want him, I guess pick him in the second round, but that's not a guarantee with the Rams at number 31. So I wouldn't do it, but I get it. They have to pick a quarterback. They don't really have a choice. Matthew Golden and Emeka Ibuka back-to-back picks. I don't like that I had these two guys fall this far. I really don't think either of them will or should be on the board this far. But the Commanders and Steelers will take advantage. Wide receiver is not necessarily the biggest need in the world for Washington. They did add Deebo Samuel, but I think they could use another guy, and the value of Matthew Golden is just too much. As Jaden Daniels, long-term number 1 receiver potentially, that will be a lot of fun. And then Emeka Ibuka at number 30 to the Steelers. This is an interesting one because remember at the beginning of the draft cycle, everyone had the Steelers picking a receiver in the first round. Then they traded for DK Metcalf, and we all figure, well, they now have a really good 1-2 punch with DK and Pickens. They don't have the second. Why would they use their first rounder on a receiver? And that's pretty sound logic. But I'm buying these George Pickens rumors. I really could see him traded away. His skill set has a lot of similarities to that of DK, and they'd be a little bit redundant together. I'm curious to see what the return would be on Pickens. I can't imagine it's anything less than a second-round pick at the minimum, because he's a really, really good player. I would guess it's a second-round pick and then some. Green Bay, I've seen linked to him. I hope that doesn't happen, but objectively, it absolutely would make a lot of sense if you think about it. I kind of think George Pickens does get traded, and I think Emeka Ibuka would be a really good fit. Pair him with DK Metcalf. And he just feels kind of like a Pittsburgh Steeler. The Steelers' thought process here is, this is probably a top 15 player in the draft who's falling because teams are maybe overthinking it a little bit, maybe a little prospect fatigue. He's going to be a really good player right off the bat. You're looking at a pro's pro with him. And I think in 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be thinking, how did we let the Steelers and Mike Tomlin end up landing this guy? This absolutely could be a quarterback. I kind of think that Shedeur Sanders is not the guy for the Steelers. I believe it's Jalen Milroe. I think he'd make the most sense for them. Gives them something different at quarterback. I want to see them take a swing. Stop trying to hit singles and doubles. Now, with this pick, they're trying to hit a double. Into the gap might be a triple. But at the quarterback position, I want to see them swing for the fences, and I wouldn't be surprised if their thought process is the same. With a team like the Rams here at 31, with a team like the Saints here only in the second round, it wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers just say, let's not risk it, let's get our guy. But I don't think you have to. I don't think Milroe will go to the Rams with the next pick. I don't think he's going to go to the Saints to start the second round. And remember, the Steelers just got a second rounder in the trade with the Bills. So they can wait and hope he falls to 62, or the more likely avenue is that they trade up probably somewhere in the 40s to make sure they get him. If they land Milroe in the 40s, get Emeka Ibuka here, I think that would be a really good process on the part of the Steelers. The big hurdle for them would be the Los Angeles Rams, who, as I've talked about on the second channel, I've connected the dots. I think they're going to pick a quarterback, and I think it's going to be early this year. They were very close to trading away Matthew Stafford to the Giants. They ended up working out the financial compensation, were able to keep him. That leaves me to believe that McVay and company might have a succession plan. Maybe that was a guy in free agency. Maybe it was Justin Fields. Maybe it was one of the guys already off the board, Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart. That very well could be the case. The guy I've linked with them personally is Dart, who was available for their first pick, but they traded down, and obviously he's gone. I don't think they will pick Dart in the first round, and if I was convinced there's a chance, I would have just had them pick him at 26. I definitely think quarterback will be in play for the Rams here, though. I think one of Milroe, Tyler Shuck, or Kyle McCord will be a Los Angeles Ram next year if this is how the first round plays out. But for now, I don't have them doing so. Instead, I'm going to give them Savon Revel out of East Carolina. I think he's going to go earlier than people expect. 6'3", really long arm, super athletic corner who played very well in 2023. Tore his ACL, only played 3 games last year, but the Rams are a team who's not afraid to take a risk on maybe an injury-plagued prospect. They need corner, and I think this is a guy who, if he's healthy, and unlike, say, Jahad Campbell, this injury happened back in September. So he's been recovering for a while. The hope is that he will be ready for training camp, I would imagine. And I think this will be a fun pick for the Rams. Number 32, James Pierce to the Eagles. This is certainly a fascinating one, but I think it's one that makes a lot of sense. He's one of the most talented players in the class, and someone is bound to take a chance on him despite the character question marks. The Eagles did it 2 years ago, trading up for Jalen Carter, and that move has paid dividends. If they don't trade up for Jalen Carter, who knows if they would have won the Super Bowl last year. They have a winning culture. They have the right veterans. They have the right coaches to be able to get the best out of a guy like James Pierce, who's not necessarily a bad kid, but more so has attitude and maturity questions, very similar to that of Jalen Carter 2 years ago. With Josh Sweat gone, I think he'd be a good fit in this defense. They don't necessarily have to rush him in. He can ease into it, kind of like they did with Nolan Smith. He made minimal impact as a rookie, and then last year he played more and more, he got better and better, and by the time we got to the playoffs, Nolan Smith was one of the best players on the field. I could see them doing something similar with James Pierce, and in 2 years' time, he might be a really, really good player for this team. I do want to do a quick bonus before we wrap things up here, the first couple of picks of the second round, because the Chargers and the Lions traded out of the first round. But they had the first 2 picks of the second round, so I figured, why not? For the Chargers at 33, I'm going Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. Jim Harbaugh gets to reunite with his guy. I'm buying stock in Will Johnson slipping. I think it makes sense, given the medical concerns, given the launch speed. But we also have to remember this is a guy who was a fantastic player since his true freshman season with the Wolverines. And if anyone knows him well, it's the guy who coached him for 2 years, Jim Harbaugh. Lions at number 34, my team. There's a few guys I thought about here. Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia. No one's talking about him as a first-round pick. I could totally see it. I think he would be my Cole Strange, Rashad Penny candidate in the sense of, whoa, he ended up in the first round. I haven't thought about that at all. Unlike those 2 picks, I don't think it would be a colossal reach, though. I think Jared Wilson's good. I would be a fan of it. Another guy I really thought about was Landon Jackson. I think he'd be a good fit for what the Lions look for in terms of size, in terms of explosiveness on the defensive line. I wouldn't rule out maybe Darius Alexander, the defensive lineman out of Toledo, in this spot. I've seen us mocked Maxwell Harrison. I don't think he'd be the choice for us here, but I guess it's possible. Really, the 3 it came down to was Donovan Jackson, Landon Jackson, and Jared Wilson. If I had to guess, I think it'd be one of those 3, and I lean Donovan Jackson. He is primarily a guard, but can play tackle, played tackle through the final 2/3 of last year once Josh Simmons got injured, and he held his own. He was quite solid out there, and if not for that, who knows if Ohio State goes on to win the national title. I think his guard tackle flexibility will be a good thing for Detroit. He has a high floor. You can plug him in right away at guard, which is a need. The hope would be that he's one of the guard starters. Christian Mahogany is the other. I think Graham Glasgow is kind of your 6th man on the offensive line who can play guard or center in case of an injury or in case one of the young guards struggle. A good thing, though, about Donovan Jackson is that he can kick outside to tackle. I thought Taylor Decker took a step back last year. If the Lions can get out of that contract within the next couple of years, I think it's more possible than people realize. Maybe they try Donovan Jackson at left tackle. He has the experience doing it at Ohio State. I wouldn't rule it out. I also want to talk about some players who I had slipping out of the first round. There's always a few surprises every year. The biggest one I think would definitely be Jahad Campbell. As I mentioned, I think it would be because of the medical. Otherwise, I think he would go probably to the Buccaneers at 19. In this scenario, I think he probably goes, I would think, in the top half of the second round at minimum. Josh Simmons might be a surprise. I thought about Kansas City, but with Amarian Hampton slipping, they are able to move up for him. Maxwell Hairston, I think, would be the other big surprise. There's a lot of teams who could look at him. I think Minnesota, Green Bay, Buffalo. I've seen him linked with Detroit. I don't think that would happen. Similarly with Philadelphia, I thought about it, but I don't think he would be their type. I think those are all teams who would look at Maxwell Hairston, but the Bills traded up for Barron. Shamar Stewart fell to the Packers. Malachi Starks fell to the Vikings. So Hairston slips a little bit. The fit I really like for Hairston early in the second round is Dallas. I don't think he'd make it to Dallas. I think he'd be one of the first players off the board here in the second round. But I really thought about Dallas moving up to the end of the first round to pick him. He's exactly what they like at the cornerback position. He's a ball hawk, and they like guys who can track the football. Trayvon Diggs and DaRon Bland, though, their futures here are questionable. Bland's on the last year of his deal. They're not going to be able to pay everyone. Trayvon Diggs, there were rumors they might cut him, given that, he's starting to wear down in terms of the injuries. And obviously they're paying Dak, they're paying CeeDee Lamb, they're going to pay Micah Parsons. Can't really afford everyone. So I really like Dallas with Maxwell Hairston. I think that'd make a lot of sense. And then for some lesser surprises, Luther Burden seems like he's probably going to go outside of the first round at this point. A name to watch who I think would go earlier than expected in this range is Kevin Winston. I thought about him with the Eagles at 32. Had a really, really good 2023 at safety for Penn State. Looked a part of the first round pick, but he got injured in the second game of the year with an ACL. So he should hopefully be healthy by the time we get to camp, if not fairly soon after. And he looked the part as a first rounder in 2023. So that'll just wrap things up. I hope you guys enjoyed. For my main channel people, I hope you guys like something different here. And for the second channel people, I appreciate you following along throughout the draft process. Again, I might have a what I would do mock draft up in a few hours on the second channel. If not, it will be in the Discord server. Again, the link is in the description. So I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. Peace out.